Hey everyone, it's Carter King. If you're an educator, a leader, or just a parent who wants to teach kids about space, check out my newest book, Carter's Journey Through Space. It's available now on Amazon, Target, and bookstores everywhere. Come explore the universe with me.
Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create ecosystems and environments, where people thrive. I am very, very excited for this conversation. We have an executive team advisor, coach, speaker, and offsite facilitator, and the founder of The Modern Inc. Whitney helps leaders and teams get to the root of what is really happening beneath the surface so they can strengthen alignment, accelerate action, and lead with greater clarity. Whitney, my friend, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Kyle. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Likewise. You know, I love introductions for a multitude of reasons. One, it really just builds the person up that you're talking to or that you're introducing. But then two, I often find there's so many things in introductions that we never have the time to be able to say because it's a short period of time. What is something about you that you wish people added in your introduction that you find so valuable in who you are?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that I love most about what I get to do is helping people realize what they're really after is already inside of them. And some people might introduce me and describe that as me being the pusher, the fearless person. But I really think for myself and what I teach is all around building that awareness so that you can adapt to fear differently. And so actually a little bit of a different take on your question is when people do introduce me as fearless, like I actually hate that because it's really just the awareness to learn how to adapt and build around that. So a little bit of a different take on that.
So do you believe, I love that perspective and I love that answer. Do you believe that everyone fears? Do you not believe that some people genuinely are fearless as they're approaching whatever endeavor they're approaching?
Yes, I do think that we all carry fear in some way. And I think it's the term has just been built in this negative context. So you start with resistance, right? Resistance is leading you to, there's fear underneath of that. But we often will say, we don't put those two things together, right? So whenever you experience resistance yourself or in others, what I often first go to is their full clarity. And if there is like real clarity, I'll give you an example. What's the one thing, do you have something right now on your to-do list that it's been on there for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks? It just keeps going.
Oh, 100%.
Going. Yeah.
100%.
I bet you if you looked at it, it's probably not that hard. You just don't know what the exact first step is, or it's too big and you haven't layered it out. You don't know what the first thing to do is. The first thing just isn't clear.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think, so my thing that I've been holding off for the last 2 to 3 weeks is a conversation, right?
Okay, good example.
And I believe the first step is easy. You just got to set the date to have the conversation. But I think the first few words on how you open up the conversation so that you can create an environment and a condition where this person receives what you're wanting to communicate to that person in the way that you see it in your heart. But sometimes it doesn't necessarily get communicated in the way that that person may want it to be received. that is more of the challenge. And I think that is rooted in not necessarily this idea or this desire to be a people pleaser, but more so this desire to create always an environment where my words or my presence creates kindness or creates an ability for that other person to not be tear down. But I still want to be able to build that person up in the process. But it's a tough conversation because
Right.
it ends in us going two separate ways in a
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're clear on the first step. Great. You're maybe not clear on exactly the first few words, but then that's where we move to the fear or hesitation or whatever you really want to call it, right? Which is what you just talked about, how it's going to land, what the outcome's going to be, all of those things. And that's what happens across teams under pressure is that conversation, this is just a microcosm example, right? But
Yeah.
that conversation gets avoided.
Hmm.
And so then other things happen. And then as leaders, we solve for those other things happening when it's really the conversation that needs to be had. That's the unlock.
No, that's good. So you're solving essentially for the system or the symptom and never really taking the
Exactly.
time to actually address the real issue or the real root or the real small thing that needs to be able to
Right.
be taken care of. And
Right.
as you're solving for all of these things around the small thing still exists. And we're putting all of this effort into the wrong efforts in a sense.
Right. And it's human stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's these things are happening. And the effort in talking about this isn't to say like you're never going to experience fear because fear is a signal. It's a good thing. We know that to be true. That's not new information. But when we say like, yes, we know it's going to happen, but what I'm building are the tools to build awareness and definition around it so I can move through it faster next time or with less hardship. That's the goal, right? That's what I see high performing leaders do faster.
What I hear is awareness, clarity. What I hear is emotional intelligence in a sense. Why is that so important? You know, I love having these conversations around emotional intelligence. And interestingly, if I'm being frank and honest, I didn't even know what emotional intelligence was until about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was probably because I was probably the least intelligent emotionally leader there was out there. It was all X's and O's. It was all production based, performance based. I did not want feelings in the workplace at all. And I realized that is why we experience certain results and certain metrics and certain turnover. And when I got exposed to it, I really started to do that deep work and get more aware and get more clear and started to empathize and be able to have better crucial conversations. And it's accelerated in all other categories. So why is this so important in the workplace, especially from a leader to be able to create conditions and environments like this for their teams?
Yeah, it's a good question. Often I see leaders when they want to evaluate their culture or get a pulse on their organization, they might say, okay, let's look at our values or let's look at the morale or let's do a survey. Don't do the survey unless you're going to do something with it, right? But a better metric to look at, a better evidence marker to look at is look at the last 3 high pressure situations or high pressure decisions and what happened.
That's good.
How did your people show up? What was the outcome? What happened? And then look at those patterns. I'm often asking teams instead of what went, like if you're evaluating something, what went well, what could be differently. Sure, that's great to do an after action. But more so when you're checking in, what's quietly carrying weight that we're not talking about? What's maybe harder than it feels like that it needs to be? And let's focus on that.
Yeah.
And that's where it's not on the surface emotions and the feel good stuff, but it is emotional intelligence because that is I heard another one of your on your podcast talk about the MHS, the emotional intelligence assessment. I'm also certified in that. So that is all about balance. And there's many different markers that look at things from self-awareness to self-regulation. It's not just the feel good emotions.
Yeah,
So
it's not.
really
It's not
looking at
just this like woo.
yeah, it's not. It's really not.
What are some of the patterns though that you're seeing, Whitney, in environments
Mhm.
in that aren't necessarily aware or emotionally intelligent versus the ones that actually do have more of a positive and healthy environment?
Yeah. I look at 6 patterns. I'll give you an example of a couple of them, not to go through all of them.
Yeah.
And I will say that, again, similar to working through fear, the goal isn't to eliminate those patterns because they're gonna come up. We're human. It's
Mhm.
spot them to understand the signals to spot them sooner.
Yeah.
So one that you kinda hit on already is what I term caretaker leadership. So what that is when you are avoiding the hard calls. You're softening something for that one person. Those are the signals that tell you something. The fear underneath of it is inherently we don't want to hurt that person's feelings.
Yeah.
Are we real? But what I tell leaders is, and I've been saying this a lot with teams, ironically, is that you are doing a disservice to the other person if you're not giving them that feedback
That's
because they
good.
can't read your mind.
That's good.
You're doing
Now,
a disservice.
now let's say we have the patterns and we understand the various things within our organization. What are the steps that we take? Like, what do we do as leaders to be able to better create conditions for our teams to be prepared, but then aware, but then also produce at a high level?
Yeah, it is. It is all about the environment and creating those spaces to pause. I actually just saw an article this morning about 78% of leaders are now looking at taking it, slowing down. They're more focused on slowing down versus speeding up in terms of the results. And that is so different than I've ever heard before and counter to what I'm seeing in other spaces. And this was mid-market companies. So very interesting stat there that I want to explore more. But taking a step back, creating a container, and this is not a plug for me, but really having a third party,
Yeah.
someone else to push those buttons. Because when you can't see the label of the jar that you're in first. And also when you're with your peers on the team, you are hesitant to say the thing.
Yeah.
You may not observe the body language. So being able to push on those buttons or ask the questions. And then I always come back to the quote about the environments, which is that I'm sure you've seen and probably love is when the flower's not growing in the garden, you don't change the flower, you change
Yeah.
the environment,
Exactly.
right? So when those patterns are coming up, you don't say, "Oh, Bob's being Bob again. It's Bob's fault." You say,
Yeah.
"Okay, what's going on here?" And
Yeah.
that's where the awareness and the ability to have those conversations come in.
Why do I love that you mentioned earlier in regards to like these teams that solve symptoms rather than identifying even the root cause of what's actually going on. Like, why do you believe that teams try to solve surface level problems rather than naming the actual deeper issues that are contributing to what's going on in the first place?
Yeah. Well, first, because they're most apparent. I wouldn't say they're always the easiest because there's still
Yeah.
challenges, but they're the most visible. It's almost like when you think about any health situation on the surface, it might look like something, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
And be able to see that they might say, I think a common one I've seen before is we're just not on the same page. I actually wrote a post about this morning, and I think alignment really is the most. It's funny you introduced me with that word, which is alignment is the most overused and least accurate term.
Tell me more.
Because when you're seeking alignment, what does that really mean? One, it's going to mean something different to everyone. And two,
Mhm.
you're still solving for that surface thing. We need to get on the same page. But how we're doing that is not, that's not creating sustainable alignment. So that's
Yeah.
another one of the patterns, which is we think we're aligned and we get out of the room and there's stalled decisions, there's side conversations. We've all experienced that before. That's not alignment. But everyone leaves the meeting saying we're aligned and they're not
Mhm.
because you're solving for the top problem.
Yeah.
You're solving for the surface thing that says, I just want to get out of here, or that makes sense enough. I'm good.
So after we create these conditions, after we're aware, after we identify um, these spaces to pause, what are the tangible steps that a leader listening in can be able to take to start establishing some different things within their organization?
Yeah. So it's really building that awareness, like you said. So when I say you're building the tools to move through it faster, it really starts with that awareness. And then, like any tough practice of conversation, some starters, right? Some things that you might say or ask. So giving people that, and practice reps, feeling comfortable getting it wrong, and then coming back and checking in on it. I like to use like a personal training analogy or a sports analogy. You're not going to go to the gym once and say, "Oh, I achieved my goals, getting stronger, losing weight, whatever it is." It takes some reps and practice, and you're going to get it wrong. So great teams that I see do this well create space on a regular basis. And I'm not talking every day, quarterly ish, to come together and zoom back out. And in their team meetings, they're really practicing. And this is the key difference: holding each other accountable.
Hey, it's Kyle. Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the program.
Because by having that first conversation, you're creating this shared language and a responsibility to each other to say, we agreed on this. We said we're going to go direct to the source if there's an issue, for example. But you went to so-and-so. Let's come back to that, right? And being comfortable with saying that because we actively agreed on it and we have shared language to do it.
Why this work, Whitney? Like, what was the slingshot moment? You know, I love asking this question. Like, what was the moment that brought you back, that really had to pull you back a little bit to really be able to propel you into this work today?
I think it's a combination of things. I went to business school, but I was in marketing. I never thought about consulting. And then I was in a really bad accident, life-threatening accident. I was run over by a boat in 2012, and it had me really just I was a year out of college. So I was in my first job, and I was just trying to get back to that old version of myself, which
No,
was
we can't just scoot over. We can't just scoot
okay.
over. Like, hold on. We got to stay there for a second. You got ran over by a boat. Tell me more about that story and kind of like walk me through the moment, as well as, you know, what are the steps that happen after that? Because that's like ran over by a boat. That's a lot right there.
Yeah, it was a lot. I was training for a triathlon. So I was an athlete, not like a top athlete, but I had run half marathons and I wanted a new challenge. I was always, and still am, a challenge seeker. And so I signed up for a triathlon. I had been training for 6 months. I felt really strong. And I was at my grandparents' house. They live on the water. And I grew up skiing, going there my whole life. And that day, early June, my mom was also training for a different race, said, why don't we swim open water? We haven't done that. You haven't done that yet. You've only done it in the pool. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to. This resistance was rising for me. And I was like, I don't really want to, which really was the fear of, can I do this? everyone's here. They're going to see me. I don't know if I could really do this. My dad said to me, what better time than now? Whit, like, let's go. And I was like, right, I'm going to do it. So we got all geared up, caps, swim, all the swim stuff. We had a spotter boat following us, buoy set up. I was swimming around the second buoy, coming in about 75 yards from the pier. And I look up, and I always said to myself during my races, like, last mile, push through, like when you're at that like final piece. And I remember looking up and seeing the pier and then putting my head back down and saying that, and then black. That's it. I was run over. I was essentially T-boned by a drunk boater that was driving really too close to the shore, going too fast. My dad and my grandfather saw him coming, were waving at him, and it was too late. He wasn't paying attention and essentially T-boned me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was taken to the shock trauma center in Baltimore or Maryland, and I was in a medically induced coma for about 5 days after lots of surgeries and all of that. I woke up on a Thursday and I said, I thought it was Sunday, which was the day of the accident. I said to my mom and dad, I said, you have to call my boss. You have to call my trainer. And they looked at me. They looked at each other. They looked back at me and they said, it's Thursday. And at that moment, I knew it was way worse than I had. I didn't, to that point, I still didn't really know what happened. I had time was weird and I heard different things, but then I asked what happened and they told me.
You know, I unfortunately love hearing stories like this. One because I can see you now. You're not in a coma, obviously, anymore.
Yes.
But I love hearing stories like this because there was a perseverance, there was a bounce back season, a reinventing yourself after that. It's not like you just jumped back in the pool the next day and just got back to it. Can you walk me through who you had to become to be able to be the person that you are now, and what you had to go through and what you had to overcome so that you could really be able to continue to lead this work today?
Yeah, I think it sounds cliche, but it really is about the mindset, because I certainly in that first week or two and probably thereafter went through all the stages of grief. And at some point in that first week, I said, all right, what do I have to do to get out of here? It was, what can I control? What can I do? That was all that was on my mind was, what can I do to move forward? Because focusing on what happened or the person who hit me, that wasn't going to do any good. So not to say that I didn't have those moments and do that, but I did have to move forward and focus on that. So I set little goals. And I just focused on, truly, some days it was day by day and some days it was hour by hour. Because if I focused on the day ahead, it felt too overwhelming and really paralyzing. And so I just focused on, okay, right now I'm going to eat this. Right now I'm going to do this exercise. Right now I'm going to do this next thing. So it was, I had to really shrink down the goals.
Yeah.
And then I was there for about a month, setback surgeries. After I was out of the hospital was a lot of recovery, physically first and then mentally. And I set goals from there too. My first 5K was in December of that year. And then I did a small triathlon the June after. And then I completed the triathlon I was training for the following August. So a year and a few months after, the Iron Girl.
Wow.
And then post that, it was really more about the mental recovery, because I had hit that marker in my mind and I went to actually work for the hospital, which was great. But I think that was the turning point in my decision to do this work. I enjoyed working there and it was a good time in my life to do that. And it was a toxic working environment. And I knew that if I was going to spend my life in work, spend more time at work than at home, it was going to be doing something that helped people be their full selves
Let's
and
go.
have passion around what they were doing. So I started working for a consulting company, and I was doing project management on the back end and working with our consultants, and just fell in love with it. And I've had the chance to meet leaders and employees from all different levels. And I think the reason I keep coming back to it is seeing people step into who they really want to be. That's one. And two, that we're all just human. We're all just figuring it out.
Agreed.
And I've
Agreed.
sat across from the table of an executive that will make more money than I will ever see, that has been overly successful, and they're talking to me about their people problems and problems that your nonprofit executive director has too. Like, that's humbling and that's real.
That's good. That's so good. And Whitney, I appreciate you sharing that story and just being so open and vulnerable, and just your grit to continue to keep fighting, to keep going. For someone that is listening in that may have not gotten physically hit with a boat, but feels like going to their workplace feels like an accident every single day,
Mm.
can you encourage that person?
Yeah, that's it's a good one. It's a tough one. And I always talk about everyone has a story. You don't have to be hit by a boat or have a traumatic accident to build this fear of resilience, this work around fear and resilience itself. We all either, if we haven't experienced something like that, we know someone who has, someone who's battling cancer, gone through a divorce, had someone they love pass away. There's something they have to work through. And so you asked about going to a job that doesn't feel great. Now, I want to also acknowledge like the realities of that too. Sometimes we don't have a way out of that realistically, right? Like, we have to pay bills, right? So if you're in that place where you feel like there's no way out, that's where you focus on the things that you can control and find joy in the moments that you can, and take it hour by hour in those moments and start planning for something different, because you have more agency than you believe.
Yeah.
And if you do have that option, I'd say get someone that is outside of your bubble to help coach you through that and help you understand what that is for you. Because I work with a lot of people. I'm coaching people right now that are really at this crossroads, right, of that, which is, I've climbed this ladder. Is this the thing that I want to do anymore?
Yeah.
Right? They don't hate it, but they don't love it. It's more of the indifference. And that really, I guess, similarly comes back to the awareness of, in your core, what is it that energizes you? Do you know that? Do you understand that? And then how do you get paid for that? Right? And finding a space to do that. And again, I understand nuances aren't like, we're not always set up to do that, but can you do a little bit on the side? Or can you have this job portfolio that says, okay, I have to do this job to pay the bills, but I'm volunteering here, and that gives me joy and energy. Or I'm mentoring this person and I just love that. Like, what is that for you that you can create? Because really the only power we have is over our mindset,
True.
and that we get to choose. It's powerful.
You know, I really appreciate you said the word create, like the things that they create. And I talk to students all the time about not always striving to become something, but to build and to create something, because who you
Yeah.
have to become in the process of building something, that is where the real magic happens.
Yeah.
And, you know, Whitney, you're the person to coach. You're the person that these people that are going through those seasons of rebuilding, reinventing can work with. Can you talk about how you work with clients and teams and why the work that you do is so necessary and important?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I'll be working with leaders inside an organization, and that's often around confidence, clarity, building their awareness. And when
Yeah.
I'm working with individuals that come to me directly, it is when they're at that crossroads and they are building that. A lot of the work we're doing on the front end is awareness building.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
walking them through an exercise that I call Claim Your Power, which is around understanding your true values, your strengths, and where that plays out. Because what I found is that whether it's jobs that you've had over time combined with societal pressures, a different set of those things kind of dilutes that.
Yeah.
It dilutes what's truly inside of you, whether it's your power is intuitively seeing things or more of a systems thinker or a doer. Sometimes those shackles are put on us and then we're just doing the thing and we're like, wait, this isn't the thing I want to do.
Mm.
And so being able to like pull those back and really see what it is so that you can move differently and feel differently doing it.
Where can people find this? Like, where can people connect with you? Like, how can we
Yeah.
begin to do this work? Because there's so much in this conversation that resonated with me, and there's so much work that I've even had to do and realization and unpacking that I had to do to get to the point where I'm leading now. But I recognize even there's a lot of things that you've communicated today where I can continue to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
Where can people find
Yeah.
you, and what would be their first step in engaging with you?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I just want to add one thing on that too, is that
Sure.
I'm still actively working through it too.
Yeah.
Coaches have coaches. If they don't, they're probably not a great coach. You work on I have my own support system of people.
Yeah.
And you said like you grow through the things that challenge you. I just started writing my first book and it's already
Oh,
challenging me and I'm going to learn and
yes.
grow and feel resistance and fear through the whole thing. I know.
Mhm.
And so I think it's just important to realize that we're all here. We're all human. We're all here with different strengths
Mhm.
to help each other in different ways. So with all that being said, you could primarily find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. I like to post thought leadership there. You can connect with me there, follow along, or my website, themoderncc.com. But certainly connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message if you want to learn more.
Whitney, this conversation has been such an amazing conversation. If somebody's still listening in and needs that first step, what would be your word of encouragement, a quote that you would leave them with, or a strategy that you would give them so that they can begin to start moving towards the places that you're already taking your clients?
Well, if you're still listening, thank you for still listening. And I think it's back to that choice to create. It's cliche to say like you have one life to live, but listen, it's all made up. How do you want to live it?
That's good. That's so good. That's so good. That inspires me. It really does. It gave me something just like in that moment. I really appreciate you, Whitney. I appreciate your heart. I really believe this was such a thoughtful and timely conversation. Your wisdom, your honesty, your transparency, and even your ability to name what I feel like so many leaders cannot always articulate is so important and so necessary. If you're still listening in, one of the questions that we always ask our listeners is, what type of culture are you spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create. It's another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. Go make yours worth catching. We'll see you guys next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture Podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.